Bloomberg Tech is live from coast to coast with Caroline Hyde in New York and Ed Ludlow in San Francisco.
This is Bloomberg Tech. Coming up, Google's thinking about the next phase of its TPU program, and that moves markets. We'll have the latest.
Plus, AST SpaceMobile shares plunge after the Blue Origin space launch miss over the weekend. We also spoke with Blue Origin CEO.
And IPOs are so back. Cerebras IPO is back on the table, months after withdrawing a previous attempt.
But first, we check in on these markets, which are dictated by geopolitics once more. Look, on the day we are down on the Nasdaq 100 to the tune of 0.7%, we're actually hitting session lows. Why? The latest headlines coming from President Trump. The ceasefire that currently is holding, the truce that they had put in place for 2 weeks, is unlikely to not be extended. It's unlikely to be pushed forward, even as though we anticipate some talks to kickstart once again over in Pakistan on Wednesday. Now, there's also concerns really about the Strait of Hormuz likely to remain blocked. Ed, what this means is that the streak of tech stock wins is likely to be coming to an end. We're up 11.6% over 13 days. If it had held for a 14th day of gains, that would have been the longest winning streak since before you were born, 1985, according to our own Dan Curtis, and that's the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq 100. Well, it looks like it's not going to be a 14th day yet.
It would be before I was born. There's a big focus right now on Google's TPU program. There's a report from The Information that there are talks between Google and Marvell about an inference-specific TPU somewhere in the future. By the way, that's a report and story that Google is declining to comment on full stop, but it's moving markets in the sense that Marvell's getting a big boost from it. Separate to that, Bloomberg's reporting that Google plans to announce its new generation of TPUs at an event in Las Vegas this week. Let's get the details on that with Bloomberg's AI infrastructure reporter, Dina Bass. So much focus on the TPU program, right? Google's own use of it and then the expansion of it to third-party customers. Anthropic's one that you and I have reported on, right? What are they going to tell us in Las Vegas this week? What is the future of the TPU program?
So what we're reporting is they're probably going to announce an inference chip, for running AI models after they've been trained. Thus far, they've been doing training and inference in one chip. We're expecting and reporting that they're probably going to announce something separate just for inference. Google chief scientist Jeff Dean told me in an interview, look, the way inference demand is growing, quote, it now becomes sensible to specialize chips more for training and more for inference workloads, and that they're looking at a bunch of things. Their chip chief, Nvidia, declined to tell me specifically whether they're going to announce that this week, but, said we'd be hearing more soon. And this continues sort of a trend. Nvidia announced a fast inference chip from what they'd acquired from Grok. You mentioned before the Cerebras IPO. That's also at this point really a low latency fast inference play.
Meanwhile, the play has been extraordinary with TPUs, and the adoption by many would call even rivals, Meta likely wanting in on the Google-made chips. So how are they broadening, and where do you think they're going to be getting supply from more broadly? There's a lot of reporting in the market, for example, that maybe they turn to Marvell versus Broadcom. I know you can't comment on that directly, but how are they thinking about their own supply chain?
Look, I think for them, supply is a problem. I was talking to Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis. He mentioned that as well. Look, you have Meta, which signed, they told us, a multi-billion, multi-year deal to use TPUs. They're just getting their first big tranche of them. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do with them. Anthropic has a huge deal. Citadel is going to talk about how they're using TPUs at the Google Next conference this week. And what Demis was telling me was that, contrary to what Jensen Huang said last week on the Dwarkesh Patel podcast, that, it's really just Anthropic that wants them. They actually, have a lot of people that are interested. They don't have enough supply. Demis was saying to me, look, what they end up doing is prioritizing the, top of the line frontier lab customers, because those are the customers who are most capable of taking advantage of what TPU has to offer. More broadly, I think the TPU play, and this is why it appeals to these big frontier labs, is that Google is the only, maker of a large top-of-the-line frontier model, one of the top, models that also makes, AI accelerator chips in large volume. OpenAI has said they will as well.
I think that's why it's worth lingering for a minute on why the TPU is useful. So you explained really well that to this point, the TPU tensor processing unit has basically been a general purpose accelerator, training or inference. But when you put it side by side, as many people try to do against Nvidia's latest GPU or other inference-specific chips, what is it about Google owning the architecture, about designing it for specifically the inference use case that makes it better? Is it money? Is it power? What do we need to know?
What Google's argument is that it is the fact that they know what you need for training and running a top-of-the-line model. There are, two things in the last couple of months that have really increased the interest in Google TPU. One is the Anthropic deal, which was a validation of the technology. The other was sort of the release of the latest version of Gemini, which was trained and is running its inference on Google TPU, and the strong reviews that it's gotten. Google uses data and requests and information from their own AI model teams to figure out what they need to prioritize and, frankly, what they need to fix in the chip business. They work together to figure out that, for example, Google TPU wasn't doing, the utilization was too low on those chips when you were using it for reinforcement learning. Demis was telling me they're using it to figure out, how precise the chips have to be as opposed to where they can save money. And that's sort of a set of data that flows into the Google TPU design team that other chip makers don't necessarily have. Nvidia does have a very, solid model team. But, among the big three, Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, for frontier models, Google is the only one making AI accelerator chips at volume right now.
Dina Bass is a great story. Can't wait to see what comes out of the Vegas event. We appreciate you joining today. Now let's just dwell a little bit more on big tech stocks. Look, they are taking a pause like the rest of the market today from their recent winning streak. And that's as investors navigate concerns for peace talks between the US and Iran. But let's discuss the tech outlook in particular with Anna Rathman, CEO of Grenadilla Advisory. And once again, geopolitics comes to the forefront. But the fundamentals of tech, are they vindicating the valuations? Because boy, have we had a run up of late.
Yes, I think it's difficult to value tech at this point, especially with AI, just a few weeks ago, pre-war, we were worried about the $650 billion AI infrastructure spent by the hyperscalers. And today we're not really talking about that. In fact, we're wondering if we have enough capacity. And, frankly, the previous reporting about Google's TPUs, we can have all of these deals, right? Looking forward to 2027, 2028. At the end of the day, it really is about shortages, right? And this is where the geopolitics really comes in, as well as, we're hearing it from the manufacturers in the ISM manufacturing indices. So I think that the valuation is really difficult for tech because computing needs are real. But you need real assets in order to build real assets, which are the picks and shovels of the AI story. So, I think we're kind of in a quandary here.
So does that mean, Anna, don't do anything, stand pat until we get clarity, at least on the geopolitical side of the equation, which in and of itself affects the supply chain of chip manufacturing? For example, helium that can't get through Hormuz right now.
Yeah. I think AI is one of those stories. When it takes off, and it's going to be difficult to catch. So in terms of investing, I think you stay invested. If you are invested in hyperscalers, you're already exposed to a lot of data centers. Perhaps think of some of the adjacent industries of manufacturing and industrials. As far as the war is concerned, it's difficult to price that in as well. The story is very different today from last week, but I do think that the markets have sort of priced in not a binary outcome of will we have a deal versus will we not have a deal. I think what the market is pricing in is this very wobbly, very messy ceasefire that might continue for a while.
So I find this really interesting. We've spent a lot of time emphasizing that the NASDAQ 100 had this amazing 13-day streak. And people seem to forget that before that 13-day period, there was a big sell-off in technology shares. And if you look at some of the Goldman prime brokerage data, hedge funds were dumping out of US tech stocks, software in particular. Why is it, do you think, that the investors sort of then felt the calm to start buying almost immediately as the war was taking place?
Well, I don't think the investors were waiting for the calm. I think the investors were waiting for some bottom where it felt cheap enough to come in. Because again, the AI story is a long-term story. Even software, I think it was more of a sledgehammer tool that we were using to knock out all of the software indiscriminately. And now software is still going to be pressured, in my opinion, because of native AI stories. But I think at this point, we may be applying more of a scalpel rather than a sledgehammer. So from that perspective, everything was oversold. So I think investors just look for a cheaper point to enter the market. Technology
earnings start big time in earnest this week, in some sense. What do you think will happen? What do you think, what kind of bar do you think is set for investors for this tech earnings season?
Well, you know, if we look at some of the international tech stocks that we've heard from, such as TSMC and ASML, I mean, that demand story is here and real and, you know, in the future as well. So I do expect the demand story to continue. Whether or not the companies are actually poised to capture that is another story. And that's a corporate story. That's a management story. So one in particular that I might be a little bit nervous about would be Intel, just because of the recent history, just because of some of the issues with the foundries. Other than that, I'm still pretty constructive on tech, and we'll see what they actually report this week.
Anna Rathbun of Grenadilla Advisory, thank you very much. Now, coming up, Blue Origin's New Glenn successfully reuses a booster for the first time, but the mission also delivers a major setback for the payload that was on board. We're going to hear from Blue Origin's CEO, Dave Limp, next. This is Bloomberg Tech. It was a story of both success and failure for Blue Origin's space launch over the weekend. For the first time, the Jeff Bezos company reused a booster for its New Glenn rocket and landed it successfully. But the satellite it was carrying for AST SpaceMobile wasn't placed in the correct orbit and is, quote, too low to sustain operations.
Ed, it was painful if you own the shares of AST SpaceMobile, therefore. Look, came rocketing back down to Earth, down 9% for AST SpaceMobile. At one point, it was off by 14%. And this off-nominal orbit means a lot for a company that needs to get about 14 up in this year.
Yeah, so, you know, AST is a paying customer of Blue Origin. And if you go on social media and you look at Jeff Bezos or Dave Limp, the CEO, they were celebrating the Blue Origin part, that they landed the booster, they reused the booster. It's only the third time New Glenn's flown. But basically, the satellite that they were sending into orbit was in the wrong place. And it doesn't have the means in terms of thrusters to move itself. So they deorbit it. And the insurance company actually comes in and pays for it.
And that's what's weird about AST SpaceMobile sort of being the one that bears the brunt here, because they get the money back from the insurance, but it needs to get its satellites back up there to be able, in a swift succession, to allow you and I to make the calls that we want to do. Look, Scotiabank analyst Andres Consello was sort of saying, look, even though the reusable booster landed successfully, the mission was a failure, and the Bluebird 7 failure highlights the need for, well, more redundancy, backup plans for these failing units for ASTS.
It's a black eye for Blue Origin because part of their business plan is to put satellites into orbit for customers. But again, they really needed the rocket itself to work, and it did. I spoke to Blue Origin CEO, Dave Limp, but that was ahead of the launch. We talked big picture about the company's future, and this is what he had to say about the New Glenn program.
I think it'd be a really good year if we could do, 8 to 12 flights this year, up from 2 last year. That would be, that'd be a good cadence for us. I can see a path that we have plenty of hardware to do that. It really is what we learn from the flights. I would tell you that there's never been a time where launch is in such demand. And by the way, I think the demand's going up with all these direct-to-device announcements. Amazon made one, obviously. Other AST is doing direct-to-device. And these mega constellations, we have our own constellation we announced with TerraWave. That if I could fly a rocket every week right now, I would be sold out for the indefinite future. And so our job is to get out there, get as fast a cadence as we can, as quickly as possible. And the foundation of that, again, is just to build a world-class manufacturing business. And that's something I've done for a long time, and the team's done for a long time, and I think we're on the right path. We still have a ways to go, but I'm excited about the progress.
The world became familiar with Blue Origin through New Shepard, the smaller form factor launch system, and the first focus of that was kind of space tourism. Going to a pretty low altitude, relatively speaking, for a few minutes of weightlessness. And, of course, I was in Van Horn, Texas, when Jeff Bezos himself went up. But you took the decision to halt that program, in large part to focus on Blue's participation in getting America back to the moon. And so, in the first instance, Dave, what has the result of that decision been? Have you been able to accelerate that other program, the lunar program? How have you moved and reassigned resource and people to fulfill that ambition?
Yeah, we were able to fly 98 people above the Kármán line. I've never seen so many smiles on every astronaut that we were able to do that for. And I think if you had to make the decision to put New Shepard on pause, we put on pause for at least 2 years. With your heart, it would have been a very hard decision, because you saw it when you saw Jeff fly. Every customer is the happiest customer you've ever seen. But when you make that decision with your head, it was probably one of the simpler business decisions that I and Jeff have ever made, because I'm so passionate about getting the U.S. back to the moon, as is Jeff. It's I don't think the country wants another Sputnik moment. We have been saying at Blue for 20 plus years that the moon is this incredible gift given to us. It's 3 days away. It's got all the resources that we'll ever need right there, at least for the foreseeable millennium ahead of us, and we know how to get there.
Blue Origin CEO Dave Lim there, speaking with Ed over the course of the weekend. And coming up, we're talking Apple's revamped Siri. It may have been revealed. More on that next. This is Bloomberg Tech. Time now for Talking Tech, and first up, China's iQIYI says it expects AI to produce the bulk of its film and TV content within 5 years. Now, the Netflix-style streaming platform plans to transform its app and website into a social media destination centered on AI-generated programming. Now, as part of that shift, the company unveiled a new AI toolkit it says can handle nearly every stage of the filmmaking process. Plus, regulators across Asia are taking a closer look at cybersecurity risks in their financial systems as concerns grow over the spread of Anthropic's Mythos model. Now, in Singapore, the financial regulator is urging banks to tighten up vulnerabilities, while in South Korea, government agencies have been meeting to plan their response. And Huawei has unveiled its latest foldable phone, the Pura X Max. Now, the device unfolds horizontally to roughly the size of a small tablet and is priced at around $1,610. Now, the launch comes as competition with Apple heats up, with Apple expected to roll out its own foldable later this year. Ed.
Let's stick with Apple, whose upcoming WWDC event is set to reveal the future of Siri. But ahead of the forum, Apple's teaser may have revealed a glimpse of the revamped interface. Let's get to Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, who covers all things Apple and consumer tech. And this was the subject of this weekend's Power On. Mark, I don't know. Every weekend I read Power On, it's usually based on who you're talking to, you're reporting. This time, you're getting your microscope out, you're looking at the imagery. What are you trying to learn here?
Well, every time Apple announces an event or they announce a new conference, they put out this teaser graphic or invitation. And from time to time, it gives you a pretty good indicator of what's to come. But usually you only realize what that teaser actually was in hindsight. But now I can tell you, several weeks ahead of the conference, that this WWDC font, this logo, this glow, this design they have there, actually is representative of the new Siri interface. Yep, it's representative of the new Siri interface. Basically, they're moving Siri to a new design. If you're familiar with the iPhone's dynamic island, when you trigger Siri, it'll appear up in that little camera area. And then it has that new font like you have in the WWDC logo, and it has a glowing cursor similar to the glow you see around the 26 and that logo you were showing.
So, fold that into what we experience, how that will seem, what, in fact, Siri will seem like when we finally get it into our hands or our ears or our voice, the way we're going to interact with it.
Siri has looked cool for many years,
Yeah.
but it hasn't worked so cool for many years, right? It's in many ways, it's just pushing people to the design in order to distract from the functionality. That's what we saw from Apple Intelligence. But this time around, they think that they have nailed it. They think they're going to get Siri to work with the features they previously announced. Some of the new enhancements that are coming that they haven't announced yet are a Siri app, so a standalone app, a chatbot-like interface for the first time to better compete with Gemini and ChatGPT, and then a new feature that they call internally World Knowledge Answers, which is basically a perplexity competitor. So you can search the web and get summaries of information without it actually pointing you to Google. It'll happen within the Siri interface itself. So if this all works, I think they have a pretty compelling story to tell for their voice assistant and AI come June.
Right. Mark, real quick, it's better to follow this story in aggregate over a number of years. Like, think back to 2 or 3 WWDCs ago and you reporting like Siri and Apple Intelligence isn't going to be the focus then. Looks like it will be the focus now. Summarize where Apple has actually landed with Siri that is AI improved.
In terms of the underpinnings of Siri, they're using technology from a Gemini model, merging it with their own model technology in order to get it work more properly. It'll be able to analyze data on your phone to help you take action on it. But big picture, this year's conference is really all about Siri and AI. They've basically hit pause on all non-AI or Siri-related features. Lots of bug fixes and performance enhancements. But the focus is on this voice assistant this year.
Mark Gurman, as always, giving us the hints. We so appreciate it. Let's talk about now humanoid robots for a minute, because one has just won a half marathon race, full robots in Beijing, but get this, it ran faster than the human world record. The race was held in Beijing over the weekend, showcasing China's really rapid advances in robotics and artificial intelligence. And the robot strode across the finish line, Ed, in 50 minutes and 26 seconds to the state-run China Daily. That's according to them. And that beat the human world record holder, Jacob Kiplimo of Uganda, who finished the half marathon in 57 minutes and 20 seconds last month in Lisbon. What a stunt. I mean, last year, it took more than 2 hours for the robots to win.
That's a video of robots running in a race. I mean, that's just literally what it is. 100 teams, 300 robots. The director won't show it, but I'm just grinning and laughing because that's a video of robots running in a race. Kara,
but it's important. Liquid cooling that's going to go on in that. Maybe that helps us in other parts of industrial robotics.
So many GPUs on fire. Okay.
This is Bloomberg Tech. Welcome back to Bloomberg Tech. We talk about geopolitics now. President Trump says it's, quote, highly unlikely that a ceasefire with Iran will be extended. This is VP J.D. Vance is set to head to Pakistan for deal discussions. Now, Bloomberg's Jeff Mason has just spoken with the president, but a few moments ago. You join us now, Jeff, and this tone seems negative.
You know, I'm not going to say negative or positive, just what he said, which was a couple different things. He said that he thought talks could work out well for all parties, but he also said, as you rightly quoted, that he was not intending, or it was at least highly unlikely that he would extend a ceasefire. He also said that the ceasefire ends on Wednesday, which is a little bit of news because the 2-week period that most people were assuming goes through tomorrow, Tuesday. So that was interesting. The president also made a point in our phone conversation of saying that he was not in a rush to get a deal. And he talked about the length of the Iran war. He talked about the length of the Vietnam War, the Afghanistan War, the Korean War. So he was couching this timeline, or his own timeline, in the fact that many other wars have gone for a long time, and he just said he was not in a rush.
I'm just going over the headlines that were generated from the interview, Jeff. There are several of them. I guess operationally, what happens next? What did the president tell you about what he and his cabinet will do in the coming days? We mentioned J.D. Vance, the vice president, and what he does now plan to do with regards to talks.
Well, he gave a little bit of detail about when the talks are expected to happen. He said that they were likely to be on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, and he said that J.D. Vance was expected to leave later on in the day today, Monday, which contradicted what he said to another reporter at another news outlet earlier, where he suggested that the vice president was already en route. So the next step are these talks. I asked him when we spoke about the ceasefire if he expected that fighting would resume right after the ceasefire concluded if there wasn't a deal, and he said he expected so. So to your broad question, it's kind of a dual track here. He's expecting talks to take place, and he showed some optimism about those talks, but he's also clearly holding over the threat of additional attacks to start as soon as this week if a deal is not concluded. And just for a reality check for our listeners and viewers, remember that the last time there was a major peace deal with Iran happened during the President Barack Obama's administration. That deal took a year and a half to hammer out. So timing here it would be unusual if they're able to get a deal as fast as Wednesday evening, which is what the president said was the deadline for the end of the ceasefire.
Bloomberg's Jeff Mason, who's just off the phone with US President Donald Trump. Thank you very much. There's a lot going on in markets. Much of it relates to the headlines about the war in Iran, but actually in Bitcoin's case, so we're around $75,600 per token, Caro. I saw the headline that Strategy, Michael Saylor, etc., bought $2.5 billion in Bitcoin in the trailing 7 days. And I think that that's their biggest buy since the end of 2024, something like that. Maybe that's a factor in the market. Maybe it's just a risk asset behaving like everything else.
Who knew that Michael Saylor actually still wants to continue to buy Bitcoin?
Yeah.
I mean, many would not be surprised by that. It's interesting that in the DeFi space more broadly, that's been that weekend hack draining, what was it, $300 million from a
Which has
crypto
outflow
project?
consequences, right?
It really does. Just negative sentiment around DeFi, but people can separate the two.
Just
Bitcoin is not DeFi, DeFi is not Bitcoin.
Really quick, in the technology space on single names, Adobe is higher by about 1%. It announced basically a broader agentic ecosystem with basically everyone in the world of tech, AWS, Anthropic, Google Cloud, IBM, Microsoft, Nvidia, and OpenAI. And an earlier report on that had boosted shares. And then there's the kind of big thing that's happening in aggregate. The NASDAQ 100 is softer and actually pushed to session lows after some of the headlines from the president. But the main thing is it snapped a 13-day winning streak, right, Kara? And that is what we've been talking about in that 13-day period, sort of how tech is unstoppable in the face of what is sort of a tense situation in the Gulf. Let's speak to Bloomberg Equities reporter Carmen Reinecke. I mean, that's kind of the story, right? Tech has plowed on irrespective of those geopolitical overhangs.
Yeah, we've seen just an incredible rush back into risk assets from investors. I mean, even today, we had this really significant geopolitical news, at least at first. The drop wasn't quite as significant as I might have expected. And there are parts of tech that are actually still holding up today. So I was writing about the IGV, the software ETF last week. It had its best week since 2001, really significant gains there. Today, it's actually holding up a little bit. It's doing a little bit better than the hardware sector, than the stocks. At least last that I checked at my terminal, it was up a little bit today. It hadn't completely erased
Adobe
all of its gains. Yeah. Exactly. And so we are seeing still some bright spots here. And I think the names that drove the NASDAQ's 13-day streak are really interesting. So we definitely had talked about Intel, had such an incredible rally. That was the top of the charts there. It was the #1 performer over those 13 days. And then the memory names were right after it. So Marvell, SanDisk, Western Digital.
Can we go into Marvell a little bit more? Because the hardware story is basically what's been unstoppable.
Yes.
And Marvell, there seems to be reporting out there that maybe they're going to be working alongside Google. Google broadening out from its TPU Broadcom relationship to some other players.
Yeah, well, and this is one that actually the stock is sort of bucking the trend today. At least in the intraday, it was on track to close at a record high. So another record high, Marvell still looking really strong. And yes, so the news today is that there are reports that it's in discussions to develop 2 chips with Google. So one is a memory processing chip and the other is a TPU. And those are both really significant. It's also potentially in talks aimed at designing semiconductors exclusively for Google. So that's a huge deal for a company like Marvell. And again, it's had a really incredible rise. So through Friday's close, it was up more than 60% this year. It's just extending those days.
I'd say Broadcom's down in the session as well, right, to you both. But I'd point out it had an astonishing start to April, like every other member of that basket. So interesting move.
Yeah, we've got to keep an eye on the hardware, and we can dig in a little bit more. But Carmen Reinecke sets us up perfectly, always got her eye on the broader moves. Let's dig in a little bit more on this Marvell story. Bloomberg Intelligence senior analyst Kunjan Sabani, who has been watching the stock, positioning itself for maybe taking advantage of custom chip demand. And here we have it, maybe some reporting showing that they can be really relied upon by the likes of Alphabet's Google chip design. What do you make of the reporting coming out of the information in this particular instance?
Yeah, this reporting really validates what we have been talking about for the past 2 quarters, that, the noise prior to 6 months in Marvell was all about Amazon Trainium 3. But we think they're really expanding beyond just the number 1, number 2 hyperscalers. And what's more important is that MPU, which falls in their XPU attached portfolio. This is the areas where sophisticated hyperscalers like Google, Amazon, Microsoft are now optimizing custom chips beyond just the core powerful TPUs or accelerators. So this is where we think Marvell can gain significant share. And this comes at higher gross margins, by the way.
Yeah, in inference, memory is more of a bottleneck, right? And so the MPU just moves data. That's its purpose. I think the thing that we try and reiterate is that Google owns the design and architecture of TPU either way. So in that case, what is it that Broadcom to this point and potentially Marvell actually do, Kunjan? What's the value add of partnering with someone like that?
So when you think about beyond that core digital logic, it's the IP sets surrounding. How do you connect to the memory? How do you do your packaging? How do you have your interconnect IOs? This is where these companies come in with their own IP portfolio and add value. One more thing to add here is the inference hardware stack is changing. It's not just one hardware stack fits all size. So we are going to see multiple players. There's also talks about MediaTek also participating in one of the Google's sort of TPU versions. So we are going to see this diversification when it comes to ASIC now.
And by the way, on the Marvell side of this, Google declined to comment to Bloomberg on any of the reporting. But it's not Google, it's Broadcom or Marvell that phones TSMC and gets those things fabbed. Kunjan Sabani from Bloomberg Intelligence with the research. Really appreciate it. Now, coming up, a conversation with Greg Martin of Rainmaker Securities as markets get set for some mega IPOs. This is Bloomberg Tech. AI chipmaker Cerebras Systems is back in the IPO spotlight. The company filed publicly for a US IPO on Friday, just 6 months after pulling its previous attempt. Sources say the deal could raise around $2 billion, testing investor appetite for large-scale listings. The company's filing shows gross margins slipped to 39% in 2025 from 42% a year earlier, highlighting some of the pressures even high-profile AI names are facing, Karen.
But at least it's not loss-making on this year versus last year. Well, revenue certainly doubled. Let's talk a little bit more about the IPO landscape. I'm joined with Greg Martin, managing partner at Rainmaker Securities. And Greg, what is the appetite likely to be? Say we go into Cerebras and we think about how, yes, they've suddenly galvanized revenue growth, but the margin has been hit, as Ed articulates. Are people just going to be betting still on this desire for AI compute, the rampant bottlenecks that we see in terms of just access for AI iterations and innovations?
Well, it's a great question, and clearly this is going to lead off, what could be a big AI infrastructure year. There's already some public companies like CoreWeave and Nebius who have had nice run-ups recently. So there's clearly demand for AI infrastructure, and Cerebras numbers, they've grown revenues. I think the biggest question mark with Cerebras was customer concentration. Now they've added OpenAI, but they still have customer concentration, and so it's also a very high valuation. The company did $510 million of revenue last year. Their last round was at $23 billion, which was just done in February. And so meantime, the secondary market for Cerebras is actually traded down to about $10 billion recently. And so there's a big question mark of whether they can hit a big enough number in the IPO pricing such that their last round investors won't have a down round. So I think the market will be watching Cerebras closely. It's not the marquee name like SpaceX, Anthropic, or OpenAI, but it'll be interesting to see if the market really is open again for a company like Cerebras with such customer concentration.
And this is why we go to you, Greg, because we think about the liquidity that you can see, you can tell our audience about in the secondary market. Just how hot is it for the really exciting names? Like we were just reporting, Ed and team, about how Anthropic basically is turning away more money in terms of a capital raise that could drive its valuation up to $800 billion or so.
Yeah, Anthropic's one of the hottest companies we've ever seen. Unbelievable demand on our platform at Rainmaker. Obviously, the company added 10 billion of ARR in 1 month. They're now up to about 30 billion of ARR as reported publicly. So people are starting to value Anthropic as a share of the economy, not in sort of traditional metrics that you might see. And of course, their growth actually does start to rationalize the valuation that they've had. We're starting to see them, enter into just about every software category. So Anthropic is about as hot a company as we've seen. They raised money at 350 billion just in February. We're now seeing potential 800 billion. We're seeing unlimited demand on our platform. So clearly, Anthropic is the hottest company we've seen in a long time.
With those names, SpaceX, OpenAI, Anthropic, people always ask when we report something, how do I, as an everyday person, invest into those companies? And the first thing I say is, we don't do that. I don't do financial advice, just read my reporting. But the second thing is I say, but we have reported that SpaceX, OpenAI, and Anthropic are all likely to go public in 2026. And with that flood into the market of 3 names at that scale, how does that translate to activity on the secondary market? Do people try and position themselves in anticipation of a big listing or public debut moment like that?
Yeah, absolutely. These 3 companies in particular, they're obviously, enormous market caps, 800 billion, 2 trillion potentially for SpaceX. So we're seeing a ton of demand pre-IPO because people do think that there's going to be a run-up in the markets. All of these companies are oversubscribed in the secondary markets. And as companies get closer to IPO, there's a feeling that, hey, now I'm going to have liquidity. Now I'm going to have access to more information. But we've seen in the past, IPO allocations get cut back substantially. And so if you want to get into these companies with any kind of scale, you may have to come into the private markets and buy it via secondary or primary. So we're seeing rabid demand for all 3 of these companies in the secondary market.
Greg, really quick, we had lots of little IPOs last week. Many of them came on this show. What did that signal to you?
Not a lot. I'm much more focused on the bigger IPOs. There's clearly a massive backlog. And so there are companies that just need to go public. I don't think there's a lot to be, learned from what we saw last week. Listen, we have the potential for one of the biggest IPO years in history. The 3 companies you mentioned are going to potentially raise up close to 200 billion between them, which could suck the entire oxygen out of the market for a while. So I think what's really going to be interesting is how those 3 companies, SpaceX, Anthropic, and OpenAI, perform. And of course, it's a function of whether the IPO market's truly open, because I don't think the market's open until the Straits of Hormuz are open.
God, if that's what you're banking and waiting on, we'll be here a while. Greg Martin of Rainmaker Securities, secondary market broker who sees what's happening in terms of liquidity interest ahead of IPO. Now, coming up, Nick Storonsky, co-founder and CEO of Revolut, discusses the digital bank's future plans on this week's David Rubenstein Show. Nick Storonsky built Revolut into one of the world's most valuable fintech companies, now worth around $75 billion. The co-founder and CEO speaks to David Rubenstein about the company's future.
I think it's obviously much easier for us, given new administration, plus that we have so many other banking licenses, plus we have a banking license in UK now. So for us, it became much easier compared to 2 years ago.
So in the United States, what do you hope to be able to do with your banking license if you get it? What is the market gap that you think you can fill that maybe others aren't doing?
So basically, I mentioned already our retail business. So it's one simple app where you can do everything what you need for your financial life. And then second direction, we also provide the Revolut business accounts for businesses. And again, it's end-to-end services that you need to run your business. So payments, banking, credit will come as well, wealth management or treasury, we call it treasury. And then acquiring as well. So for example, right now, if I'm an American company, I'll need to start, say, Stripe for acquiring, then JP Morgan for my business banking, then something else for payouts, something else for payroll. So we provide all the services in one product.
Well, if you conquer the U.S. the way you've conquered the UK and Europe, Is China next, or you're not going to focus on that?
Asia, we're definitely focusing, so spending a lot of time studying Asia. And then, as I said, we applied for multiple banking licenses in Asia as well, and then some of them we got already. And then China is on the list as well. One day I hope we can set up a business there.
Now, some people have written that your bank, Revolut, is worth $75 billion. Have you ever thought of taking your organization public?
Well, the way I think about it, we kind of will be ready probably in 2 years' time. But then again, depends on how good the market is.
Since you don't have an IPO, how do people who work for you make some money? Do you make a market for people to sell their shares internally?
Yeah, so we do secondaries every 1 or 2 years when people can sell a certain portion of their stocks to external investors.
So you've done secondary sales for your employees. So employees can then get some liquidity. Do you expect before you go public you'll do any more of those, or are you just going to wait till you go public before you liquefy any more stock?
Yeah, I think so. We might do secondaries as well before we do IPO, because we do it every 1 or 2 years, so we might do secondary as well.
All right. Well, if anybody wants to sell their shares to me, let me know. And have any investment bankers told you why they're the best to do the IPO for you?
Yeah, obviously every single one is the best.
Everyone is the best. You're not in a rush to do it. You don't need the money.
So we're a bank, and then for the bank, it's super important to have trust, and then public companies are trusted more compared to private companies.
Go see the full interview with the Revolut co-founder and CEO, Nick Storonsky. Watch the David Rubenstein Show, peer-to-peer conversations on Wednesday, April 22nd at 9 p.m. in New York. Only on Bloomberg Television. Now, more on digital banking. JP Morgan, Citigroup are taking their rivalry onto the blockchain, competing to define the next frontier of global payments. Just take a listen to what they told us in a recent joint interview.
The real client problem that we were looking to solve is the ability for large multinationals, big banks and broker-dealers and fintechs to be able to move their money around, make payments seamlessly around the world 24/7.
We want to keep building on the public chain stuff. We have now tokenized money market funds with our asset management business through Connexus. We have tokenized deposit tokens. We have a full tokenization engine. We have core infrastructure. So we basically want to battle harder.
Rivals on screen, and the two banks are building competing systems, but taking slightly different paths. Bloomberg's Isabel Lee is here with one of the most read stories on the terminal today as well. How are they doing it differently? One likes stablecoins, one doesn't so much.
Exactly. So it's interesting to see Wall Street raise into this space, and it's even more interesting to see their approach. So for Citi, they've signaled an openness to stablecoins. They've partnered with Coinbase to really push into this digital asset space, and they want tokenized securities. Around 500 clients have been enabled in that platform, and they processed around $1 billion already. But JP Morgan...
A day, isn't it?
Yes. JP Morgan has been a little bit more reticent when it comes to stablecoins because for them, the KYC is a little bit less. What they prefer is to build their in-house infrastructure, their in-house blockchain called Connexus. And Connexus is really already processing over $3 trillion in volume, with each average daily block being $5 billion. So to be sure, this isn't really grand yet in the larger scheme of things.
Right.
They process trillions and trillions in their traditional payment system, but it's growing.
So they're preparing for a world in which everything is tokenized, right? So we're playing up the kind of frenemy, I suppose, angle of it. But what they are doing is laying groundwork for the state of the financial system that doesn't quite exist yet.
That doesn't quite exist yet. We have the IMF, I think 2 weeks ago, warning that if we build too much into this space, we might see actually a great crash because in theory, everything works. Send a token from 2 a.m. in Maldives to your friend in New York. But in practice, it's still a little tough. And especially if a lot of these, from the NASDAQ to the New York Stock Exchange to JP Morgan to Citi, build their own worlds, it's going to be even more fragmented than what we see today. So lots to still parse out in this space, but it's exciting to see these big banks really push into tokenized
real-world assets.
Real-world assets, yes.
Bloomberg's Isabel Lee with the story that JP Morgan and Citi squaring off on the next payments frontier. That does it for this edition of Bloomberg Tech.
Yeah, don't forget to check out our podcast, why not? You can find it on the terminal. If you're online on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeart. Ed is here in New York for the entire week.
Surprise.
What a lucky lady I am.
56 minutes into the show, if you've just worked that out. Congratulations, I'll be here.
You might be a
for
hologram.
few more
There's
days.
a whole new push into that.
Recap on the pod, and it's nice to be here with you in New York City. This is Bloomberg Tech.